Hello everyone, Johnny Hurricane here from GamersHeroes.com, and why don't you sit back, relax, and let me tell you about Aliens Fireteam Elite. And before we go any further, a review code was provided by the publisher. Aliens Fireteam Elite is a co-op third-person survival shooter where you try to survive in the Aliens universe. Most of the game consists of going from one defense point to another, defending the area from swarms of enemies. It is repetitive and tiring, but is it any fun? When the game first starts, you make a Marine and you're tossed into the hub. It's this ship, it's nothing fancy or anything like that, but here you are introduced to a few other characters and get a handful of story bits. Unfortunately, the extra characters' mouths don't actually move, and there are no cutscenes, making it a little jarring. Still, the story is fine if you're an Aliens fan. The planet has already been lost, and your objective is to retrieve a doctor from the planetary refinery. Each mission only runs about 20 to 30 minutes, but to be honest, they do feel a little longer because every defense point is very tense, so each fight feels a lot longer than it actually is. So overall, you're going to get 7 to 8 hours out of the campaign. There's also a survival mode. You unlock that after you beat the campaign, but we'll get into that later. Now, the crux of the game is its combat, right? You're going to keep moving, but every time you're going to be shooting. So if the combat's no good, the game's not going to be good. To be honest, it's actually pretty good. Killing aliens is satisfying, and the guns have solid pop to them. I'm a pyromaniac, so most of the time when a flamethrower is an option, I'm going to use a flamethrower. And the flamethrower in this game, at least on the default difficulty, is like the strongest weapon in the game. It doesn't do great against heavily armored enemies, but all the little guys just scorches them, and it feels very good. Not to mention the fire also looks great, but I also use the assault rifle, the pulse rifle. That feels satisfying. Smart gun, that pretty much does all the work for you. Shotgun, also very powerful. There were a couple of guns, like the medic can use a pistol, and I was kind of like, whatever. The sidearm pistol's terrible, but the main guns and the main combat feels good. Now, you're not just fighting aliens either. There are evolved aliens, right? Like there's a spitter and a jumper and a warrior praetorian. Those guys are really strong, but outside of the aliens are also synths. There's other enemies as well. I don't want to spoil everything for everyone, but most of the enemies you'll be facing is going to be aliens, and then you will switch into synths and other enemies. That being said, I cannot tell you how many times we were playing and an alien warrior or a praetorian rushed us and it was almost game over. One of us would go down, two of us would go down. The tension during these defense points is pretty much perfect. There's enough of a swarm that you feel like you're in danger constantly, which is a very important part if you're playing an aliens game. So for me, the core gameplay loop is actually fun. But what about progression, right? What's keeping you playing? Aliens Fireteam Elite does have classes and weapon upgrades, and these things called challenge cards. We'll get into it in a bit. I played a heavy guy with shoulder rockets and flamethrower and a smart gun, and super overpowered, quite frankly. And Smith, the other guy that runs the website with me, he played just the assault basic guy who had a grenade and then a buff, but his buff was pretty much vital because it made us reload faster and the flamethrower reload slow, and it also makes you shoot faster. So when a warrior would rush us, he'd pop his buff, we'd switch our guns, and we'd be able to melt it. I don't know if that works on higher difficulties, but it worked for us. And then when you get back to the hub, you can actually equip skills and different skill points onto this. It's kind of a unique tree. Certain points aren't unlocked when you first start, and then as you progress, you unlock blocks. So basically, it's sort of like Resident Evil 4's inventory system, how you got to shift and switch the skills around to fit everything into a perfect little spot. It's, for people that are going to be playing a long time, it's going to be enjoyable, but for me, the basic stuff worked out just fine. Another form of progression are challenge cards. These range from impossible to really easy, like some of them will just straight up give you buffs, but most of them are like, hey, one of your guns might be disabled or your gun jams randomly, but you get more rewards at the end. You have to deal 1,000,000 damage total, and then you get double the experience, things like that. You don't really, at least to my knowledge, if you fail, they don't hurt you, but if you pick one that, say, upgrades the aliens and you get to the end of the level and they beat you, well, there's no checkpoint system. so you're restarting the entire level. So you got to be careful with which ones you pick. The other downside to this, unless they patched it recently, you don't get to use these challenge cards in survival, which is just silly. So I mentioned earlier about the tension and how the game nails it, but the other thing it nails is the atmosphere of the Aliens franchise. You're constantly on edge. You're always looking over your shoulder. The motion sensor has the beep, 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 and it works perfectly. As soon as you get in and you start hearing it beep, you're like, oh yeah, here we are. The aliens scream and groan like what you want to hear when they die. Pulse rifle sounds just like you'd expect. Defense points have turrets that you can set up so you can feel like you're actually in the movie. The package combines itself into something quite fun for Aliens fans, but there are some huge problems. First and foremost, if you're playing this solo, the AI companions are absolute garbage. You will not get past probably the first main act with just AI companions. They're not good enough. They just die, and then you have to pick them up, and then they don't pick you up. It's just a big mess. Get friends, or matchmake. As I mentioned earlier, there are no checkpoints either, so if you make it to the end of a level with the AI and you lose, again, you're just restarting that whole level, and that is exhausting, by the way. I had to do it a couple times even with me and Smith, and it's still like, man, really? Survival mode is your reward for beating the game, and as far as I can tell, it's one level. That's it. We made it to the end of the first 10 waves and we could progress, but it wasn't that fun, quite frankly, so we just backed out. Maybe if you beat all 50 waves, you unlock another level. I don't know, but like I said earlier, you can't use your challenge cards. So again, it's like, it's just not as good as the story. And for me personally, I mean, without challenge cards in there, I would rather just replay the story missions. Like, I played survival once and I replayed parts of the campaign with no trouble. I really think they should patch that and add the cards to survival mode, because as it stands right now, the longevity of the game, not super high, because I didn't see the need to play survival mode. Still, something like that can be patched, but I'm going to wrap it up there. Aliens Fireteam Elite does precisely what it sets out to do. It lets you kill aliens and defend hallways. Expecting anything more is only going to lead to disappointment. Okay, that'll do it for me. If you liked what you saw, got what you needed, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys in the next video. Later, Gators.